When a young boy vanished in the vast African savanna, his family feared the worst. But then, a wild eagle began circling the sky and led them to a miracle. This is the true story of nature's unexpected rescue. The sun had barely begun to sink beneath the horizon when Miriam realized her son was gone. What started as an ordinary afternoon in their small village, nestled at the edge of the Kenyan savanna, had turned into a parent's worst nightmare. Her little boy, Daniel, just 5 years old, curious and full of life, had been playing beneath the shade of the acacia trees near their home. She remembered hearing his laughter, the way he chased butterflies with chubby hands, and his delighted squeals as he watched the weaver birds flitting between the branches. And then, silence. At first, she thought he had simply wandered into the nearby brush to pick wildflowers, as he so often did. But when minutes turned into an hour, and the light began to fade into amber and gold, a tight knot of fear twisted in her chest. "Daniel!" she called, her voice cutting through the thick, warm air. There was no answer. Panic prickled at the back of her throat. Word spread quickly through the village. Neighbors dropped what they were doing, leaving cooking fires and unfinished chores behind. Fathers grabbed lanterns and machetes. Mothers clutched blankets in case they found the boy shivering in the chill of night. The village elder, a man with deep-set eyes and skin weathered by time and sun, joined the search, leaning heavily on his carved wooden staff. They scoured every familiar trail, calling Daniel's name until their voices turned raw. "Check the riverbed," someone shouted. "Maybe he followed the goats into the tall grass." But as darkness draped itself over the savanna, shadows deepened, and hope began to fray at the edges. The African night was unforgiving. Predators stirred with the cool air. Hyenas giggled in the distance, jackals cried out, and the deep, resonant calls of lions rumbled far away, but still too close for comfort. Miriam felt her knees weaken as fear took hold. What if her little boy, so small and fragile, had strayed too far? What if he couldn't find his way back? What if— She refused to finish the thought. Her husband, Joseph, placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We will find him," he promised, though even he could not hide the worry clouding his eyes. That first night was the longest of Miriam's life. They lit torches and moved as a group, sweeping the area as best they could. But the savanna was endless, a sea of grasses and scattered trees stretching beyond the limits of sight. With each passing hour, the temperature dropped sharply. What had been a warm afternoon transformed into a cold, biting night. Miriam clutched Daniel's favorite blanket tightly in her arms, as if holding a piece of him could somehow keep him safe wherever he was. She thought of his small face, his bright eyes, the way he always asked 1,000 questions about the animals of the plains. "Do eagles watch over us, Mama?" he had asked just a few days earlier. Now she whispered into the night, as if her words could carry to him. "Yes, my love, they do." At dawn, as the first pale light crept across the land, the search party regrouped. Exhaustion weighed heavy on their shoulders, but none of them were ready to give up. That's when they saw it. High above the savanna, a lone eagle soared across the sky, its wings stretched wide, catching the early morning thermals. At first, no one paid it much attention. Eagles were a common sight in these lands, proud masters of the sky. But this one was different. It wasn't hunting, nor gliding lazily as they usually did. It was circling, tight, deliberate loops, over the same patch of tall grass. Again and again. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. "Joseph," she said, gripping her husband's arm, "look at the eagle." He followed her gaze, squinting against the brightening sky. "It keeps flying over the same place," she murmured, hope flickering in her chest. The elder stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the bird's behavior. "In our stories," he began softly, "the eagle sees what we cannot. It watches from above and guides those who are lost." The villagers exchanged uncertain glances. Was it foolish to believe? Or was it the sign they so desperately needed? Joseph made the decision. "Follow the eagle," he said firmly. They moved quickly but carefully, cutting through the dense grass and thorny shrubs toward the area where the eagle circled. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the savanna. Miriam's heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of fear and fragile hope. As they drew closer, the eagle's cries grew sharper, more urgent. It dipped lower, its powerful wings slicing the air, then rose again to continue its vigilant circles. "It's as if he wants us to follow," Miriam whispered. Reaching the marked area, the searchers fanned out. The grass here was tall, almost taller than a grown man, and thick with tangled underbrush. They called Daniel's name again, voices cracking with desperation. And then, a sound. Faint. So soft it might have been the wind. But no, it was a whimper. "Over here!" shouted one of the men. They pushed through the grass, parting it like a curtain. There, curled at the base of an acacia tree, was Daniel. His small body trembled with cold, his lips cracked from thirst, and his eyes fluttered open at the sound of their voices. "Mama," he croaked. Miriam fell to her knees, tears streaming down her cheeks as she scooped her son into her arms. "You're safe now, my love," she sobbed, holding him close. The villagers cheered, some weeping openly. Above them, the eagle let out one final piercing cry, a sound that echoed across the plains. Then, as if his duty was done, he spread his wings wide and soared into the endless sky. Miriam looked up through her tears, watching the great bird disappear into the clouds. "Thank you," she whispered. And though the eagle could not answer, in her heart she felt a quiet certainty. The sky had been watching. Nature had not turned away, and her child had been guided home by a guardian from above. Daniel lay in his mother's arms, his small frame trembling not just from cold, but from exhaustion and fear. But when he felt her familiar heartbeat and heard her whispering words of comfort, a tiny smile flickered across his cracked lips. The searchers quickly formed a protective circle around them, shielding mother and child from the blazing midday sun. One of the elders passed a water flask to Miriam, and with trembling hands, she lifted it to Daniel's lips. He drank eagerly, coughing a little, but his eyes regained a spark of life with every drop. "You are safe now, my boy," Miriam whispered, pressing her forehead against his. "You are safe." But even as relief flooded their hearts, every eye turned skyward, to the eagle, still circling overhead like a silent sentinel. It was no ordinary coincidence. The villagers had lived their entire lives beneath these vast African skies. They knew the rhythms of the wild, the signs carried by the wind and sun. And they knew eagles circled prey, carcasses, or sometimes rode warm air currents in lazy spirals. But this eagle had been different. He had not circled lifeless prey. He had not drifted idly on the thermals. No, this eagle had led them, deliberately and with purpose, to the very place where Daniel lay hidden in the tall grass. The elder, leaning heavily on his staff, broke the hushed silence. "This was no accident," he said, his voice rich and steady. "The eagle saw what we could not." He lifted his gaze to the great bird, now gliding higher into the sky. "Today, the sky itself has watched over us. The news of Daniel's rescue spread through the village faster than wildfire in the dry season. People rushed to greet the search party as they returned, carrying Daniel gently home. Cheers erupted, mixed with tears of joy. Miriam clung to her son, unable to let go, as friends and family pressed close to catch a glimpse of the miracle child. But amid the jubilation, conversations kept returning to the eagle. "It was the eagle who showed us," Joseph told anyone who would listen, his voice thick with emotion. "If we had not seen him circling, we may have searched in the wrong place. We might never have found our boy in time." The villagers, some skeptical at first, began to see the truth of it. They recalled how the eagle had arrived at dawn, how it had circled persistently, refusing to drift away as others might have done, how its cries had sharpened as the searchers drew near. It was as if the great bird had become a bridge between the heavens and the earth, guiding human hands toward a fragile life waiting to be saved. That evening, as the sun sank below the horizon in a blaze of orange and crimson, the village gathered beneath the wide acacia tree in the center of their settlement. They lit a fire that crackled and popped, casting long shadows across the ground. Around the flames, elders told stories, old legends of animals acting as messengers between the earth and the spirit world. One story told of lions who had protected a lost child until villagers could find him. Another spoke of elephants who led a caravan to water during a harsh drought. Now, they had their own story to add, the tale of the eagle who guided them through fear and darkness, toward hope and light. Miriam listened with Daniel nestled safely in her lap, his small hands clutching her fingers. She pressed a kiss to his forehead, tears welling in her eyes. "Your guardian has wings, my son," she whispered, "and he flies high above us." In the days that followed, Daniel grew stronger. His cheeks, once hollow, filled out with color. His laughter, tentative at first, returned with growing strength, filling the air like bird song. He became something of a symbol in the village, not just of survival, but of the mysterious and wonderful connection between people and the wild world surrounding them. Children pointed to the sky whenever they saw an eagle, their faces bright with wonder. "Is that Daniel's eagle?" they asked. "Maybe it is," the adults would reply, smiling softly. "Or maybe his spirit soars with all of them now." But the story of the eagle spread beyond their small village. Travelers carried the tale to neighboring communities, and soon it reached the ears of journalists who visited the region to cover wildlife stories. A reporter, hearing of the miraculous rescue, visited the village and spoke to Miriam and Joseph. They told him every detail, the long search, the hopeless night, and the moment they saw the eagle circling like a beacon in the sky. Moved by the story, the reporter shared it with the world. Headlines read, "Eagle guides rescuers to missing child in Kenyan savanna. A miracle of nature." "Guardian of the skies, how an eagle saved a boy's life." Photos of Daniel, smiling shyly beneath the shade of an acacia tree, filled news pages and social media feeds. And alongside them, images of a majestic eagle soaring over the endless plains. The world marveled at the unlikely alliance between human hope and animal instinct. In cities far from the wild savannas of Kenya, people stopped to read the story, touched by the bond that had crossed the divide between species. The eagle had become a symbol of something larger, a reminder that in our darkest moments, help can come from the most unexpected places. The villagers, humbled and honored by the attention, decided to commemorate the event in their own way. With the help of local artisans, they carved a wooden totem depicting an eagle with its wings spread wide, standing protectively over a small child. They placed it at the edge of the savanna, where Daniel had been found, as a tribute to their feathered guardian. And every time they passed it, they remembered. They remembered the fear, the despair, the desperate prayers whispered into the night. But most of all, they remembered the moment hope soared down from the sky, on wings strong enough to carry them all. Miriam often visited the totem, holding Daniel's hand tightly in hers. As they stood beneath the vast African sky, she would gaze upward, searching for a glimpse of their guardian. Sometimes they saw an eagle gliding high above. Other times, only clouds. But always, in her heart, she felt the quiet assurance that they were being watched over. "Thank you," she would whisper, her words carried on the wind. For Daniel, the experience left a lasting mark. He grew up with a special reverence for the creatures of the sky. He told anyone who would listen that he wanted to become a protector of nature, to watch over the savanna and its wild inhabitants as they had once watched over him. And in the years that followed, he kept that promise. Daniel studied conservation, learning about the delicate balance between humans and wildlife. He became a guardian of the very land that had once threatened to swallow him, ensuring that future generations would live in harmony with the skies and earth alike. And so, the story of the eagle who saved a child became not just a tale of survival, but a legacy. A lesson passed down from parent to child, from villager to traveler, from elder to youth. Respect the land, and it will respect you. Honor the creatures who share our world, for they are closer to us than we know. And never lose hope, even when the way seems lost, because sometimes help comes from the sky. Years passed, but the memory of that fateful day remained sharp in the minds of everyone in the village. The sun rose and set over the savanna in its endless rhythm. Herds migrated across golden plains, and storms came and went, leaving behind fresh green life. But the story of Daniel and the eagle who had watched over him had become a living legend. Visitors traveled from far regions to see the wooden totem carved in honor of the great bird. They listened to elders recount the tale beneath the wide branches of the village acacia tree, their eyes wide with wonder. And always, in the telling, the same truth echoed. The sky watches over us. Daniel grew strong, both in body and spirit. What began as the curiosity of a child blossomed into a deep respect for the wilderness around him. Guided by the memory of his rescue, he devoted himself to learning the ways of the land. He studied the language of the animals, the patterns of the seasons, and the delicate balance that tied every creature to the next. But it was the eagles that drew his heart. He spent hours watching them, his eyes following their graceful paths across the sky. He learned their calls, their nesting habits, and the way they seemed to float effortlessly on invisible currents of wind. And as he watched, he often wondered, was it the same eagle, the one that had once circled above him? Maybe he would never know. But in his heart, it didn't matter. Because the eagle was no longer just a bird, it was a symbol of life, of survival, of hope. As Daniel grew older, his reputation also spread. He became a respected guardian of the savanna, working with conservation groups to protect the animals and landscapes that had given him a second chance. He led safaris, not as mere sightseeing tours, but as journeys of understanding. He taught visitors about the fragile beauty of the savanna, about the quiet language of nature, and always he shared his story. Under star-filled skies, he would sit beside the fire and tell travelers from around the world about the day an eagle had saved his life. The listeners, city dwellers, students, photographers, sat mesmerized by the tale. They carried it home with them to faraway lands, passing it on as a reminder of the mysteries and wonders of the natural world. Then, one day, something extraordinary happened. A wildlife documentary team arrived in the village, having heard whispers of the eagle legend. They sought Daniel out, eager to capture the story on film. With quiet humility, he agreed. Together, they retraced the steps of his rescue, walking across sun-baked trails and through swaying grasses. As cameras rolled, Daniel stood beneath the very acacia tree where he had been found all those years ago. The totem still stood nearby, weathered but proud, its carved eagle watching eternally over the savanna. Daniel placed his hand gently on the wood, feeling the grooves worn smooth by time and reverence. And at that very moment, as if summoned by the weight of memory, a shadow passed over the ground. The crew turned their lenses skyward. There, against the brilliant blue, an eagle soared, powerful, free, eternal. Gasps filled the air. Daniel's eyes glistened. "It's a sign," he whispered. "The sky remembers." The documentary, titled Wings of Hope, premiered to worldwide acclaim. Audiences were moved to tears by Daniel's story and the stunning footage of the wild savanna. Donations poured into conservation efforts, supporting eagle habitats and protecting endangered species across Africa. Children around the world wrote letters, drawing eagles in bright colors, sharing how they felt inspired to care for animals and cherish the natural world. The story of Daniel and the eagle had transcended borders and language. It had become a global reminder that we are never truly alone, that even in the vast, untamed wilderness, life watches over life. Back in the village, they marked the anniversary of Daniel's rescue with a special celebration. Families gathered beneath the acacia tree. Children reenacted the story in a playful dramatization, flapping their arms like wings and mimicking the sharp cries of the eagle. Elders blessed the land, giving thanks for the guidance of the skies. And Daniel, now a young man, stood before them all. His voice carried strong and sure as he addressed the gathering. "On that day, when I was lost, I thought the earth had swallowed me whole. But the sky sent a guardian to watch over me. Let us never forget. We share this world not as rulers, but as family, bound together by the winds, the earth, and the creatures that call it home." Applause and cheers filled the air, echoing into the distance. Above them, as if in answer, an eagle cried out, its call cutting clear across the vast blue sky. As Daniel gazed upward, he felt no fear. No longer was the sky a vast, empty unknown. It was filled with promise, with memory, with life. The eagle, whether the same bird or a descendant, soared overhead as a living symbol of endurance and hope. And Daniel knew, deep in his soul, that his story would continue long after him, that children yet to be born would stand beneath these skies, look up at the great birds circling high, and remember, even in our darkest moments, we are not forgotten. Help may come from where we least expect it, and sometimes hope comes on wings.